welcome back to another episode. Today we're at the beautiful Pahi Wharf in the Kaipara region on the North Island of New Zealand, and today we're going to be focusing on bird photography. It's a good spot to do some bird photography here. It's a beautiful summer's day. People are still on holiday, a lot of people about, and I'm going to share you some of my best edited bird images and share with you my Canon R5 MK II camera settings. What I use is with the Canon RF 200 to 800mm zoom lens, and I hope you find this video useful. Let me know which image you find best or like. It'll be interesting to know. And yeah, sit back, relax and enjoy this video with me. And as always, I'll see you soon in the next one. Right, first off the mark, first menu is JPEG quality. Now, we generally don't shoot in JPEG because we want to shoot in RAW to get the full functionality of editing softwares. But if you are going to use JPEG, then obviously set it to large and right up to 10. But in this instance, I don't use JPEG. We go to the next type is image type, and we use RAW, as you can see here, and the image type is set at RAW, and my JPEG I've set at nothing, so I don't save space on my memory cards. I only capture images in RAW. Next menu setting is exposure compensation. Depending on the light conditions, I generally like going down to sometimes -1 if you have sufficient light, and if you're in a darker situation you can go into the plus. But generally I'd always use a bit on the darker side, and this brings out a lot more tonal range in your images. Then ISO speed settings, I've got that at auto at this stage. And metering mode, your light metering mode, I have it on evaluate metering. Next menu is color tone dynamic range. Picture style, I use standard selection, and then color space Adobe RGB. Next menu settings, the white balance. The white balance I set as sun outdoor. You can obviously change this depending on the light conditions. I prefer not to use auto white balance, but if need be, if the light conditions are changing all the time, you can use auto white balance. Otherwise I always use daylight at 5200 Kelvin. Next menu setting is various shooting. I'll leave as is, not change that, as that is disabled for now. Drive mode, so you want to have a high speed continuous with bird photography. You want to capture every single bit of action you can. Also important, down the bottom of this menu, release shutter without card must be off, otherwise you're going to take multiple images without a card, so this is important. Select that as off. Next menu, I leave as is, no settings changed. Image review, we'll skip that for now. shooting info display, we'll leave that for now. Now, autofocus operations. I always go on servo. This means it's going to track images and keep focusing, autofocusing on moving subjects. So always ensure that your AF operation servo is on servo. Then the autofocus area, I have it as 1 point focus. And the whole area tracking servo AF on. Next menu on the autofocus menu is subject to detect, and in this instance we select animals for bird photography. Eye detection, I've used it set at auto. Next up is the autofocus character, and I've set mine at manual, and I've set the tracking sensitivity as just -1 and accelerator tracking also at -1. Next image is servo first image priority. I have left that as equal priority. Next menu, limited AF areas. These are the ones that I've selected, all with the tick marks. Next menu there, nothing, no settings done there, nothing there, and playback, not to worry about now. Network settings, we're not going to worry as well. And those are the basic settings that I use to start for bird photography. Next up is the camera mode. Now, I always used to do all my bird photography and wildlife photography in manual until I learned the power of AV setting, which is shutter priority. Now, what we do here is you can set your aperture. You want a fairly good depth of field. I'd go at least f8 or f9 if possible. For bird, you want to focus from the tip of the beak and a bit beyond, still having a fairly good blurry background. And then next up is the light compensation. Is here, if you got full sunlight, really tone this down. You can go up to like -1.7 in good light, and this is going to trick your camera into pushing up your shutter speed as high as possible. With bird photography, you really want those high shutter speeds. And then ISO on auto, and I've kept my ISO at 6400, not to go beyond 6400. Alright, as always, we import our file. We go to File, Import Photos and Videos, select our file, and then we go View, go to Develop. And there is the raw image. The first thing we want to do, obviously, is we want to crop in to the turn. And we can hold down the Shift key to keep proportions the same, and drag the image back into place. In this instance, we are going to go for a more portrait shape, as it lends to a more portrait crop, like so. and then we hit edit. The next thing I generally like to do is bring up the vibrance to around 30, and then the saturation always go easy to about 5, 7. The next thing is we see that the highlights, is quite a bit of highlights. We want to turn those right down. And we would like to also lift some of the shadows to the white side. Then I'd like to increase the clarity ever so slightly to about 4. And then we're gonna, the beauty of a raw image, we can denoise it, and AI is going to do the denoising for us. Right, denoising is complete, and what I like to do next is we sharpen the image to around 95, and then we hold down the Alt key and we mask, and we select refine the area which we want to sharpen to about there. The next thing I'd like to do, the background is pretty bright, and we'd like to keep the emphasis and the focus on the bird. So I'm going to introduce a mask, and then you go up here to the round circle, select a mask, and what we want to do is we actually want to select the background. And A has done a pretty good job, although it's selected parts of the bird as so. And there's a couple of ways of removing that. So what we do is we subtract, and we can do select object, and in this instance we're just gonna color this portion in for now. And it's made an improvement, and we want to also subtract these parts of the wing, as well as using the object tool on this side as well. And the rest we can do is actually subtract using a brush, and we could gently just brush that away as well. And then this part here, it's selected the gap between the wings, and there we want to also add using a brush, and we'll just tone down the size of the brush and then draw in, brush that in gently like so. Now that we've got the background selected, what I'd like to do is actually reduce the exposure ever so slightly and reduce the highlights as well, like that. What I'd like to do next, go back to the edit tool here to get out of the masks. I like to give it a little bit of a vignette, darken the outer edges of the image to keep the focus on the subject, and that's down here in the effects tab, and we're just gonna slightly introduce a vignette like so, looking pretty good. Next is we're going to go to the colors, and we're starting off with the color mixer, the saturations, and what we want to really, there are not many colors here as far as grays, light blues and such. But what we can saturate is just, let's have a look at the blues, and that is quite nice. It cools it a bit down to about there. I like that. Let's look at the aguas. Can increase them slightly as well. Let's look what the greens do. There is not much green in the image, so leave it about there. Then luminance, remember, is either making colors darker or brighter. So we're going to once again just check with the blues, and we don't want to blow it out. We actually want to tone those blues slightly down to about there, to +3. And then let's look at the aguas. There is not much of a influence there. Getting back up to the edit tab, I'd like to possibly just lift a little bit of those shadows a bit more to about there, and possibly reducing the highlights even a bit further. And that is it for this basic edit. I hope you found it useful, and thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next one.